Section 551.043, Texas Government Code. Public notice, the use of cell phones are prohibited. We are better to check. Are prohibited in the City Council chamber during meetings of the City Council. Members of the audience will be provided an opportunity to address the council during public hearings and during action items. Please speak into the microphone located at the podium. State your name and address. If you have a petition or other information pertaining to your subject, please present it to the City Secretary. State law generally prohibits the council from discussing or taking any action on any issue not included on the agenda. But if appropriate, the council may schedule the topic for future discussion or refer the matter to staff. No personal attacks on council members or city staff will be allowed. The mayor may call a point of order to stop the personal attacks. If an individual continues to personally attack an elected official or staff member in the meeting, they may be barred. Call the speaking to order. We'll have the invocation by the Reverend Virginia Knapp. Please rise.
Dear Lord, who created us and cares for us, we thank you for your presence in these chambers this evening. We are grateful for the earthly life, death, and resurrection of your Son, his victory over sin, death, and disease for this broken world. And at this time we bring before you a member of the Alpine Volunteer Fire Department, Tracy Felsot. May she be washed by your healing grace and fully restored. For all of us in this room, guide us to recognize our sins and repent of them, to accept your forgiveness, and rejoice in our liberation. For to serve you is perfect freedom. Set us on a path, a journey in alignment with your will, moving in your grace from glory to glory. And for our local government, Almighty God, our Heavenly Father, send down upon those who hold office in this town the spirit of wisdom, charity, and justice, that with steadfast purpose they may faithfully serve in their offices to promote the well-being of all people. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Pledge to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I pledge allegiance to the flag of
Thank you all very much. Thank you, Reverend Knapp. City Secretary, do we have a quorum?
Mayor, we do have a quorum, and Councilor Escobedo is running late. The notice was posted at 4 p.m. on May 3rd, 2019.
Okay. We have a few recognitions today, and there are many birthdays. Gio Calderon, Lauren Villanueva, Daryl Lasoya, and Andrew Chavez. And it's also public service recognition week, which I think y'all started with burritos yesterday, and so tomorrow we're going to have a luncheon at American Legion. And here we go. And Monday was the start of it. Tuesday they had popcorn and punch. Wednesday barbecue at American Legion again. Thursday I will be presenting recognition certificates to all the employees. And then Friday we'll end the week with a bang. Employees will compete in a taco competition and other games throughout the afternoon. And I will read the proclamation. Public Service Recognition Week in honor of the millions of public employees in the federal, state, county, and city levels. Whereas Americans are served every single day by public servants at the federal, state, county, and city levels. These unsung heroes do the work that keeps our nation working. Whereas public employees take not only jobs but oaths Whereas many public servants, including military personnel, officers, police officers, firefighters, border patrol, embassy employees, healthcare professionals, others, risk their lives each day in the service to the people of the United States and around the world. Whereas public servants, including teachers, doctors, and scientists, train conductors, astronauts, nurses, and safety inspectors, laborers, computer technicians, social workers, and countless other occupations, day in, day out, they provide the diverse service demanded by the American people of their government with efficiency and integrity. And whereas without the public servants at every level, continuity would be impossible in a democracy that regularly changes its leaders and elected officials. Therefore, I, Andres Ramos, Mayor of the City of Alpine, do hereby announce and proclaim to all citizens and set seal here too that May 5th through the 11th, 2019 is Public Service Recognition Week. All citizens are encouraged to recognize the accomplishments and contributions of government employees in all levels, federal, state, and county, and city. So we'll be presenting that to our employees, which are a lot of times, they work out there in all kinds of inclement weathers and whatnot. And many times they're forgotten, but they're the ones that keep the city running. So we need to give them the recognition. You see them, thank them for the work they do out there. Okay. On reports, I have a short, brief report, and it's on the U.S. bus tour number 3 on the Highway 67 corridor on the master plan. We did the final bus trip a couple of weeks ago, a week and a half ago, and we had a whole new set of folks in there with new ideas. Every idea that has been written down or given to the TxDOT folks has been put in a big ledger. So if your name, whatever idea you came out with, no matter what you suggested, as long as it pertained to the Highway 67, is in that ledger. And the folks that are working on it will condense all that, and then we'll have some public meetings in June in Alpine, Presidio, Marfa, and Fort Davis, and there'll be a rough draft of those ideas. This is just the beginning. It's the end of the study, but it's just really the beginning of the corridor, because November will mark the 2nd year, and that's when we start, I guess, finalizing. Am I not correct, Ms. Carrasco? And then it's not funded yet, so let's not get our hopes up yet, but at least we'll have a game plan in place. So if we get funded, we have something to start with, rather than wait and try to catch up on it. So those dates, I'll give you some dates here. Monday, June the 24th, and the times are tentative. It could be 5 or 6 o'clock starting time. Will be at Fort Davis. Tuesday, the 25th, June the 25th, will be in Marfa. Wednesday, the 26th, will be in Alpine, and Thursday, the 27th, will be in Presidio. And if y'all need any information, just go ahead and get on TxDOT.gov, and then go to the US 67 corridor master plan, and you'll find more information there. Thank you all very much. City Manager?
Mayor, I don't have a report, however, from city staff. We have a quarterly report from the police department and animal control.
Okay.
Yes, sir. I have a question. I'm getting lots of questions about the pool and one will have information about when the pool will open.
Okay. We'll get to that soon. We got the chief first.
Okay, I believe y'all received copies of the quarterly report for the first quarter for the police department and for animal services. As you can see, we've been quite busy throughout the quarter. Some key things that have been happening for the police department. Of course, we had the trial for Robert Fabian in Lockhart, Texas. Sent several of my officers down there for the entire week testifying. And that's coming to a conclusion today and tomorrow. But there's some other investigations that we've undertaken. We're also back up to full staff at this time. All the officers have been hired now. One of the officers we just got from Sul Ross State University is ending his training period, so he's ready to hit the street also. Questions? Yes, sir.
Chief, why the jump in your view on calls for service? Almost, 1.5 times in March compared to where we are. Is that usual for the month of March?
Not necessarily for the month of March, but it happens throughout the year. Some months just become busier. They just have more people calling in for assistance or for service.
And who are the new officers?
The new officer is John Aguilera. He comes to us from Colorado State University.
You mentioned Fayette trial. I don't recall you mentioning the outcome.
Yeah, we just found out this evening that he was convicted. He has been found guilty. Sentencing will be tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Any more? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Didn't want to go over that.
So no one else is coming?
Chief,
Chief?
you got animal control.
I asked you 30 questions. For animal services, again, they're quite busy also. A lot of the stats remain the same as they have been in other quarters. We've added in this more detail on bite incidents. I know that's been a big concern lately. Whether it's by an owner that gets bitten by their own pet, or maybe someone walking down the street gets bitten by an animal, whether they're stray or confined, and so forth. They've also had a number of adoption events, so they continue to bring animals into the shelter and also adopt them out as soon as they can, for those that can't be adopted. But again, they stay quite busy. We try to stay up to full staff in animal services, and we were for a brief period of time, but we had one animal services officer leave us, and so we just hired a brand new one that has to be trained and so forth. So kind of behind the ball on that one, but we're still doing good service.
So if you look at the numbers, it's kind of like 2 bites a month.
It looks
Human
like
bites not out, because I went through the data, extracted it out.
right,
It says on average, 2 people are getting bit,
right,
every month.
right.
That
And
seems
some of those.
high. Is that normal?
That is probably normal. What's more usual is people getting bit by their own pets and so forth.
Yeah, these ones that buy pets.
Yeah, but we do have those that are bit by a stranger or maybe their neighbor's pet that they think they're familiar with, and then they maybe enter the enclosure and they're not that familiar after all. The dog becomes defensive or whatever it is. It is usual that we have bites, not necessarily where it's out on the streets though. That is kind of unusual.
But percentage-wise, with the population of Alpine versus the bites, do you have an idea of what we said on that? High or low?
No, sir, and I'd have to actually get with Jennifer and see, the patterns for the last several years, actually. She has those figures. But in my conversations with her, it does seem like it has been up a little bit in the last quarter, maybe the last 2 quarters, which again is unusual. But we're hoping that'll even out and we won't have that anymore. They continue to patrol around as much as they can and pick up loose animals. We also have our officers that are out patrolling, make sure that whenever they spot a loose animal, call it into dispatch. So we can get those animals taken care of, either through a citation for that owner, or get the animal picked up and go through that process.
And I've seen the animal patrolling the streets quite often as I'm driving around, so.
Yeah, they're able to do that now that we have some new vehicles. I mean, they had some pretty rough vehicles that stayed in the shop a lot, but you can see them out a lot more, so.
That's good.
Is there any complications from the bites? I mean, or is it just, the guy gets bit or something like that? Or there's been no rabies deals or any of that stuff, has there?
No, sir. No, sir. Not that we're aware of. There are those instances where we do have to quarantine animals, of course, and that's precautionary. Because we can't determine whether or not the animal that bit them had its rabies vaccination.
Oh, right, yeah, I understand.
So we quarantine those when we pick them up. If it happens to be an animal that gets loose, and we can never identify the animal, then they may have to go through the series of rabies vaccinations themselves. Yeah, I had to do that myself.
Did you really?
Yes, yeah. It's not something that's pleasant, but no, they actually give it in the site where you're bitten, and then also like an arm. It's a series of shots.
Oh, yeah. Years ago, there used to be a stomach.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine.
Chief, a couple of meetings back, if I recall, we sort of have under a discussion item the idea of trying to get information
on the different incidences per ward. I think that would help us to maybe have a little larger viewpoint. I'd like to see what's happening in Ward 2 as far as number of surrenders and adoptions and so forth, so I can get an idea of what's happening within the vicinity. I think it'd be possible maybe twice a year we could get some more of a breakdown.
Yeah, that's probably going to be something that's possible quarterly. So we'll try that the next quarter, see if we can actually break it down by wards and give that information out.
Good. Thank you.
Last question, what can someone legally do if a dog's coming after them? So I look at the one here, victim riding a bike pit on the right leg. Another one, dog off leash, bit individual on a bicycle. Mace, can they take a swing at it with a golf club?
All the above. The ultimate thing is just to protect the individual.
Yeah.
We do have some dogs out there that could potentially be very vicious.
Yeah.
So yeah, they can do whatever they need to protect themselves. I know some people have a handgun license and they carry handgun licenses around.
So what happens if they do shoot a dog? I mean, I'm just curious what happens then?
Well, the whole circumstances we take into consideration. And as long as something wasn't done recklessly or maliciously, then it shouldn't be a problem with them doing that. Again, we want people to be able to protect themselves.
Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I have one more. I know that I just remembered, I did have quite a bit of citizens ask me if, and I don't know if y'all do this or not, or have in the past, when y'all are out patrolling, if y'all could just check to see what lights are on, street lights.
Yes, we've done that in the past. I just need to get the officer to go back out and do that. He's been on a day shift lately, so he had to do that. That's a good point. Yeah, he does that by wards also. It's easy to do it that way. So certainly, we'll do that as well.
Thank you.
Thank
We're
you.
done.
You can go now.
Chief, wait.
Mayor, next we have the quarterly report, first and second quarter investment report.
Hello. I'm actually going to switch them around and do the quarterly report second and the budget reports first, the revenues and expenses. So I'm not going to go over the first quarter. It's kind of a new point at this time. We're already 4 months past it. So in your package, you received the January through March expenses. I'm going to go straight to the chart to kind of break down and provide you with a better summary. The dialogue at the beginning, of course, explains the charts at the back. So I figured I'd just kind of skip it. So as far as the general fund revenues, it's page 7 in the January through March report. You'll notice that the interest rates remain high. We've already collected, if I can find my numbers here, under non-departmental about 44%. So over the past several years, the interest rates have continued to increase. I know for a lot of you, increase, it doesn't seem like it was in 2007 when we were at 10, 11, 12%, but we are at a steady 2.2%. So that is a big deal considering prior years, it was roughly below 1%. So considering the past 3 years, interest rates remain high, which is a good thing. Our ad valorem taxes have been collected at 90%, 91% of what is budgeted. It will start to decrease as the second half of the fiscal year, the deadlines have passed. So those who pay property taxes try to get it in before the end of February, and then after that it slowly starts to decrease. So over the next 6 months, we usually reach about 98% of what we budget. So we're still in line, but do expect a decrease every month. Our building services have been very busy. They've been issuing permits left and right. They are above the estimated collections. 6 months out of the year, we should be at 50% of where we're at, either revenue or expenses. They are currently at 76%. So that is a real an improvement. That is a good deal. Hopefully during the summer, more people will want to make modifications and changes and improvements to their homes and properties. As far as the parks and the pool, theirs is kind of an oddball. Their revenue comes in the second half of the fiscal year with the pool, the admissions, the pool parties, that kind of thing. So when the pool opens, we'll see the increase in the parks and pools revenue. So right now it's kind of low, but that's where most of their money comes from. So since the pool hasn't opened, there's nothing to report there. Our sales tax does remain steady. It shows at exactly 50% of what we budgeted, so that's a good deal. We haven't really had too much of an increase or decrease, it's just been real steady. Overall, the general fund is at 59% revenue collections for the year, which is 9% over what we originally budgeted. On the expense side, some of the high point ones, those that are over the 50%, City Council is over, they're at 60% halfway through the year. This is due to the attorney fees. We've had a few extra attorney fees this past 6 months, so that would explain why you're over the budget. Municipal court is at 82% halfway through the year. In April, the municipal clerk salary, which should have initially been split between the court and the administration, was not. So the correction was made in April last month based on needed documentation to indicate the employee's position. So a portion of the salary and benefits was moved out of the municipal clerk's expenses into the administration expenses. So that will show a decrease in their expenses. All other departments are roughly in line for the past 6 months, which is 50%. Overall, the general fund is operating expenses at 6 months is 40% for the fiscal year. So it's 10% below 50%. And that's just the general fund. The next page, which would be page 8, the water, solid waste, sanitation fund. So water is slightly below 50%. We don't panic because during the colder months, people don't water their yards. So we understand that as we move into the warmer months, the increase will come from people watering their yards. There is greater usage. Wastewater is in line. Sanitation is also in line with roughly 50% for the first 6 months. Overall, the water, wastewater, sanitation department revenue at the end of March was 45% of the total budgeted amount. Their expenses, the employee expenses was at 37% for the budget for the end of March. There are several reasons for this, including positions remaining open. I believe they're all now filled, so you'll see a slight change there. Water expenses are slightly less than 50%. Wastewater expenses are at 51% of what was budgeted for the year. Their biggest expenses this past 6 months has been the facility at the sewer plant and the use of Trinity to assist with the backlog of waste. So those have been their 2 biggest expenses. Overall, our sanitation are slightly below 50%. Of course, most of our sanitation fees come from the contract for TDS for our collection of trash. Overall, the water, wastewater, sanitation department expenses totaled 40% of what has been budgeted for the year. So they're roughly 10% below 50%. The airport revenues, which is right below, fuel sales are at 52% for the first 6 months. So they're slightly above despite the construction work going on at the airport. That is wonderful news. We were afraid that it would cause a significant decrease, but it has not. The land leases were invoiced in January. Those who have hangars at the airport do pay a land lease. At the end of March, 84% of what was budgeted has been collected. There is one hangar that makes monthly payments, so that will make up some of the difference. Overall, the airport revenue is at 54% for the first 6 months. This is kind of a good thing because typically the airport is under revenue and over expenses. So when we go into the expense side, they're actually in line with the past 6 months. overall expenses only totals 29% of what is budgeted. So they're quite below what was expected. But that is still a good thing because they do have some projects and things that they need to complete. The TxDOT Aviation project is still underway. It's been predicted to be completed by the end of May. Currently, the airport is benefiting from Marfa Airport being closed, so we're taking on all of their air traffic, which means we will have higher fuel sales. And when the airport, our airport is closed for, they're thinking 1 to 2 days, Marfa will take our air traffic. But we benefited the most because we're taking theirs for about 2 weeks. So we get all those fuel sales. When we look at the hotel motel funds, 38% of what was budgeted for the year has been collected as of the end of March. It's a little low compared to the prior years. We've had a couple lower months than normal. I did look up April just to kind of see if we were on a downcline instead of moving up. April actually brought in a little over 128,000, so that's a significant difference. It's about triple than the other months. So as we get into the touristy season, the summer vacation, people coming down here, we should see that increase significantly. The expenditures, 47% of the budgeted funds have been expended as of the end of March. There are still multiple events that have not yet happened or been reimbursed for. These include Viva Big Ben, Alpine Cowboys, Fiesta de Barrio, Partial Museum of the Big Ben, and Cowboy Poetry's pending documentation, and then they will be paid out. So there's some pretty big expenses there that have yet to happen. The gas department. The gas department is, of course, always opposite of the water department. So halfway through the fiscal year, they're at 76% of what is budgeted as far as revenues. We'll start to see a decline in the revenue as we enter the warmer months. So people water the grass in the summer, they use more gas in the winter. Their expenses currently at the end of March was 44% of the total budgeted operating expenses. This includes both employee benefits and operational expenses. The next page, interest and sinking. It's slightly different. I do want to point out that the interest and sinking only includes the general fund debt. The water and wastewater debt was left in their department so that at the end of the year we didn't have to make an adjustment. So those expenses have come out of that enterprise fund, and just the general fund is paying their portion. So as of March 31st, the interest and sinking had collected 95% of what was budgeted. The city did make the required debt payments at the end of February to meet the March 1st deadline. Only the general fund portion of debt is paid from the interest and sinking. The remaining portion of debt is paid out of water and wastewater. So then just a little summary. All funds and departments are operating below expected for the first 6 months. A deadline has been set to encumber all capital projects of June 7th. This will provide a better look at where the city stands with expenses and financially. I do know that several departments have some projects coming up. We just need to get it encumbered so that we can see where we are at financially. Revenue is also below expected levels. General fund's primary source of revenue, of course, is ad valorem taxes and sales tax. So as we decrease on the ad valorem and we hope to remain steady on the sales tax, we don't have very many other sources of revenue. The county has been invoiced for the fire calls outside the city limits. This invoice has not been paid as of today. For all fire calls from October to March 2019, the total amount invoiced was $3,076.14. We did budget 75, so I don't want to say that we're coming up on the summer months and there could be more fires, because that would not be be nice. The water department showed an increase. The water department should show an increase in water as, of course, we get into the warmer months. The county has also been invoiced for the portion of the Healthlanders Recycling Center in the amount of $39,753. This invoice has not been paid either. The gas department, of course, will decline as they're in the revenue, which is the reverse to the water. We should see an increase in tourism as several events are still pending and the summer attracts tourists to the area. So right now, looking at the projected year end, every department is below revenue and expense wise. So I think once we get all of the encumbered capital projects, anything missing or outstanding, we'll have a better idea of where we need to make possible changes, we may need to make amendments. I've met with a couple of the departments. It's really just knowing what they have lined up in the next month or two. So we're bringing in more revenue than we are expending.
Yes, sir.
Airport, what's the current fee that we charge per square foot at the airport?
It depends on the lease.
Yeah, I
So,
understand that, that's a variable. What would be the,
so the old lease is 15 cents a square foot, and the new lease is dependent on the consumer price index. This year, the consumer price index increased by 2.21%. And we only have a handful on the new lease.
so roughly around 15 cents a square foot
That's what it is, 15 cents a square foot
per year?
per year.
Yes, sir.
Megan, this may take me a little bit more time, and maybe at some point, maybe I'm gonna sit down with you, and maybe the city manager, so I can get a little bit better grasp as to how these numbers work. But I was looking at the first quarter report for fiscal year 2019, which begins of course October 2018 to December 2018. And we assessed the general fund revenue came in as $1,370,788. Is that correct? On page 6?
For the first quarter, 1,317,000, yes.
Okay. And so the total fiscal year to date is the same amount. And the way I see it, on the second report, for the finance summary from January 2019 to March 2019, the monies that came in amounted to $1,505,201. Yet the column right next to it, the total fiscal year to date, should, as far as I can understand, should equal the total summary of the first and second quarters. Is that correct?
That's an error on my part. That should be a 2.
I'm sorry?
It should be a 2 in front. I apologize.
Okay. Because when I went to adding these numbers, I find, of course, the first quarter says 1,505,201, and or for the second quarter, and on the first quarter was 1,317,788. When you add those two, the total that I came up with, and I may be wrong, it came out to 2,822,284. And when you reduce what you got for the first quarter, it seems like there's an amount of 962,000.
There are some, that number is correct. I mistyped that and I do apologize. But there are some variables that affect the year-to-date. So the year-to-date also includes whatever's encumbered. So if something's encumbered and then we don't purchase it, then it wouldn't be included in the next report. So if in October through December we encumbered several invoices, but they were never paid out, and the order was canceled or something changed, the price dropped, then it would affect the next quarter's report.
Just that I saw in my calculations, I saw the numbers quite high, so I kind of wondered, why.
Oh no, that was my fault. I fast fingers and I.
Okay. Who sees these quarter reports aside from you before they're reported to us?
They're put in the packets and everyone's provided them. Every month, the year-to-dates are provided to all the departments and city manager.
So Jessica sees these before they They come to us?
Not this specific report unless you request it, but everything else, the year-to-date, she does get.
I just want to clarify, the columns that Mr. Levis is referring to is on the revenue side, not the expenses.
I'm looking at the revenue side.
I just thought the encumbered ones would be shown on the expense side.
When we had the beginning
shown
of the
as a
year, all that,
liability?
yeah. Well, on the beginning of the year, when all those payments get made that affected the last fiscal year, they got posted to this year, so we had to change them to accounts receivable, not an actual.
That's what. I guess, to make it simple, that you look at the first quarter, and we anticipate certain things to go into first quarter, and through that audit process, sometimes they get adjusted to the last quarter of the prior year. So it does make for some fluctuations in the numbers when you see them when the audit is complete.
So the last part of the report included some additional information. The reason for bringing it up is it does kind of deal with our reserves accounts. So the first quarter reserves, nothing changed besides the interest. So every account earned interest, but there was nothing taken out and removed from them. The second quarter is slightly different. I did make some notes and highlight some of the sections. There's a lot of things that are pending, hence the additional information. Just to kind of give you an idea of also where we're at with some of the projects, the financial side of it, what needs to be done, what doesn't need to be done. So of course, all of our interest, our reserve accounts have earned interest. Roughly, we're at 2.4112% to 2.61%. So yes, we're steadily increasing over the prior years. So that's a good thing. I did indicate that on the rate analysis, needs assessment, and needs assessment for the water and sewer, that there's, Jessica may have it by now, but at the time, there is no contract, so none of the money has been moved towards that project, so it's still sitting in the reserves. The SCADA, we've been lucky enough that we've come under expenses that the prior year's SCADA, what would have been used to pay for it, fell into the normal operating budget. We do have some outstanding invoices for this fiscal year. We may need to move money, depending on if the sewer has any big capital projects moving forward. So the funds are pending to be moved. The sewer plant office, we budgeted $80,000. The building was a little over $52,000, but the building is still pending the electrical, water, and sewer connections, so those are additional funds that haven't been encumbered, and I can't give you an idea of what it may or may not cost. So those need to be taken into consideration. And then the 2012 reserve, of course, we just made the first payment. We'll have one more made at the end of August. This is the money being used to move towards that debt payment on behalf of the sewer plant. So I wanted just to kind of give you guys an idea that the money is there. It's sitting in this account because it provides a higher interest rate, and we're currently below operating expenses. That if down the road we don't get to that point in the budget where we're going to exceed our operating expenses, council may want to consider using the regular operating expenses instead of moving reserves if it's not necessary, so that you can keep your reserve accounts high. But it has been dedicated to these projects. It was dedicated by ordinance, so the ordinance would have to be reviewed and changed. The other one that I wanted to bring up was the fire hydrant project. Jerry Carvajal sent me an email in regards to the project and the finance side. I had several questions for him from the audit perspective. His main concern was that there is no contract with the individual who was selected to do the project. And if we're not able to meet the deadline, he did indicate that the city would have to reimburse the TXCDBG for all the funds reimbursed to the city. So that would be the $39,375 as of right now. There is an open invoice from the engineers, but it's pending the contract from the individual who was awarded to do the project. So Jerry kind of wanted to give me the heads up that that may be money if we can't successfully complete this project that we'll have to return. So, the other items I wanted to bring up were the JAG grant. So the police department has 3 technically grants. They have the HIDA grant, which you guys approve, which allows for us to have an investigator and an analysis. It's completely paid for. They cover all of their expenses, unless it's outside the duties of a HIDA operation. The JAG grant, which was awarded for $10,500, they used it to buy additional equipment. It's all been expended. We're just pending the final invoice. For some reason, they invoiced us piece by piece. So the first invoice has been reimbursed, and we have received that money. The Stone Garden grant is actually a 3-year grant. This is the first year they were awarded $71,236.32. So it's primarily, about $40,000 of it is primarily for overtime. It's kind of hit and miss. They still have their daily jobs, but they want to put in the extra hours to protect the borders. This is what this grant is specifically for, is border security and some equipment, but mostly it's for overtime. So we have submitted for $5,355.79, which is 162 hours between January and March in overtime and benefits. So I actually got an email yesterday that the money has been approved, and it should be in our account probably tomorrow. One of the other projects going on is the City Hall feasibility. We still have a little bit of a balance on that one of $5,115. So that project's almost completed. I won't hit the master park plan because the Parks Board people are here, so I'll let them go over that. Like I said, on the wastewater assessment project, we're still pending the contract. Jessica may have that already. The BD modulars for the facility plant that is out of the sewer plant, we're just pending the electricity, water, and the sewer connections. And then, of course, the street paving grant, we're just pending the contract. So these are all expenses that are still pending. They're ongoing projects. They're some of the bigger ones. Once all the departments initiate their final capital improvements, what they're spending, things could change a little bit. We may have some bigger projects going on. Some of these should be completed by then as well. So, but I kind of wanted to give you an idea of where we're at with different projects going on, how the investments stand. The money is still sitting there in the reserve accounts with a higher interest rate. Something to think about in the next couple months. Whether we want to reassign it to a different project to see where we're at with our operating expenses. We are below currently, so.
So Megan, I got a whole bunch of questions. So just from an observation on the second quarter, as we think about where we are from an under-rent standpoint, we're 6 months through the year for from an accounting standpoint, but we've only spent 27% on the roads. The probability of spending the rest of that money is probably slim, is it not?
I really can't answer that. They'd have to go out for the RFP still, get the material. I don't think they're trained.
Yep.
So, yes, it would be slim.
Yeah. So we expect an underrun there, which is good news. But not get the roads done. I would like to then ask some specific questions about the grants and projects, and I'm not sure if you're the right one or Jessica's the right one, but you commented that the fire hydrant project contract has not yet been awarded. If it's not awarded and the work done by, according to this, the 30th of November, the city would have to pay back the $40,000. What's the status of that contract?
The last email I received from Jared, and I believe Jessica was CC'd on it, is that HAT has not signed off on it.
So what's our plan?
They were awarded, they were provided with the contract documents, I believe after Mick reviewed them. And in talking to the contractor on Monday, he is hesitant to sign the contract. Based on the current project that he is working on, I've given him until Friday to make a decision on that contract. And then at that point, the next agenda, our next council meeting, it'll be up to the council how they want to proceed with that. There are certain circumstances that TDA allows for an extension. Unfortunately, a contractor with cold feet is not one of the extensions that they allow. And so it'll be up to the council to decide whether to rescind that award or to allow the contractor more time. In talking to the engineer, they still feel that even if this project is started mid-June, late June, that they'll still have it finished by the end of November. Unfortunately, we are on a timeline, and TDA is expecting the signed-off contract to be submitted this month. So that's where we're at now.
The water, wastewater assessment project, I think we talked about that in the February City Council meeting. To go get that worked, it's a critical element for Parks, Bill Smith and Cooper work. What's the status of that contract?
Megan, Johnny, and Michael and I met with the engineer in March. They are working on finalizing the details on the scope, so I expect to have that contract this week.
Okay, since that's an important one that we've all talked about relative to understanding what's underground, how long will it take them to do their work so that we understand what goes on from a under the road standpoint? Because that's 3 months ago and we still don't have anything. So what's the projected completion of that?
We'll have to work on that timeline when they get it to us. We do have a tentative meeting scheduled on June 24th for them to meet at the same time with KSA, who's doing the street study, so that they can start to coordinate their timelines and make sure that we get a finished product as quickly as possible, or at least a template of something that we can move forward with.
So it'd be nice in the next city council meeting to be able to understand what that timeline is. June 24th says...
June 4th. June 4th.
Okay, so June, July, August, September, we're 4 months left. It's amazing to me, here we are 3 months ago from when we talked about that, a contract was not even signed. The wastewater facilities modular building, so the building was delivered in October, so that's a good 6 months ago. What's the plan relative to electricity, water, and sewer connections, or is that building even being used?
There's limited use to it. In fact, I just talked with them again this week, and the electrician that they had contacted to come out and do the electrical on it was a no-show. So they're still trying to find someone to do that. The water and sewer connections is something they can get done with the plumber. I think after talking with them, they're going to contact Skinner and see if Skinner will do the work. I think the hesitancy from the electrical point of view, as a contractor, you go out and you see some electrical work that's been modified and you really don't want to take responsibility for it because there's no schematic on how it's run. Skinner's been doing most of that electrical work for them out there, and so we had that conversation, I think, Thursday, and they were going to work on getting somebody back out there this week to do it. Originally, they were giving them like 3-4 month timeline before they could come out to do it, and then the one that they had selected just never showed and then didn't call them back, so if they don't get that electrician back on track, they were looking at contacting Skinner and having Skinner do the electrical work, even though it's not within his scope of work for the city normally.
Does he have a master electrician contracting license?
I believe he does because he's done electrical work for us out there. Jay had him do the electrical work for us with the screw press last year.
6 months just seems like forever. And what's the game plan as the contractor awarded to KSA for the street sweeping?
It has been sent to Mick for review and then back to KSA for them to comment on his recommended changes.
So it is not yet been awarded.
It has been awarded.
Are they doing work?
Well, they're doing work. The contract hasn't been signed, but they have started doing preliminary work.
I'll rephrase it. So they have started work, and do we have a forecast on when they will complete their work?
We will know that better on June 4th.
I have no idea. Megan, thank you.
Anything else?
Are there any other questions? I'm hoping that we go back to monthly on the reports. The quarterly makes it a little bit harder, combining 3 months into one, so that you have a month-to-month review.
We got a budget coming up. Are we gonna be prepared on that already, or for the upcoming budget, 1920? Are we starting to work on it?
Yes, she's proposing her budget.
We have the budget calendar and the action items today, and then we'll move forward from there.
Before we complete this section, is it possible to get an update about where we are on the pool? There's lots of questions that I get. I know a number of people have called City Hall and asked if the pool is going to be open Memorial Day, and their answer is, we don't know.
You know, it's not an item on the agenda. That's up to council if they want to.
Yeah, it's not on here.
I would certainly think we as council would want to know that. We have to actually, we can't ask the city manager because we can't get a city manager's report, have that one forever. Boy, if I'm a citizen out there wanting to get an answer to the question, the council would be able to get an answer to that question. So, we want to ask.
Well, I think that should have been posted on the agenda.
Okay.
And then we could have gone forward and had an answer tonight.
And there is email.
Okay, that's fine. I will send an email to all those who've been asking questions and says council didn't want to address it. So, thank you.
Okay. Let's go on to public hearings then. We have none. Consent agendas. Notice to the public, the following items are of routine administrative nature. The council has been furnished with background, support materials on each item, and or it has been discussed at a previous meeting. All items will be acted upon by one vote without being discussed separately unless requested by council members, in which event the item or items will immediately be withdrawn for individual consideration in its normal sequence after the items not requiring separate discussions have been acted upon. The remaining items will be adopted by one vote. I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the minutes.
Is there a second on that?
Yes. Second.
Okay, is there any discussion? I have a question, and that's on the approval of minutes for a special city council meeting on April 24th. In reading the agenda, that's not what was posted at the meeting. So I think we need to wait until next week, until the special meeting to bring it back up again.
No, sir, nothing will be on the special
Nothing
meeting
but
except the swearing in and the candidates.
Okay, well, in the following meeting,
Yes, sir.
put it on there because I was reading that and what we received and what I read was totally different. And I think I made a comment about it at that particular meeting. And so I would like for someone to pull that off until the next meeting, until we have time to properly review it.
So what is different there?
The agenda on it, on the special meeting, it had something about parks and about city parks. And that's not what the agenda was about. It was a special call for meeting for the pit. And I made a comment about it at the beginning. And in reading what's in our packets, it's not the same. So I'd like to have a chance to review it and compare them.
I don't see anything with parks listed here at all. This is the minutes, not the agenda.
This one is totally different, is what I'm saying.
So the agenda.
Go back to the 24th. This, what we have in our packet is not the same verbiage that was on there for the 24th when we met, is my point.
Mayor, may I?
Yes, ma'am.
That was the agenda that was posted for the special meeting, and that same evening, the park was going to meet with council on their project.
Okay, but they didn't, because all we had was just a pit.
Right.
That was a special.
And that was the one that I mentioned to you right before the meeting started, that when the agenda was sent out for approval, it was approved, and Megan was the one that had actually put that agenda together. So-
Right, yeah, because I asked her about it at the meeting.
But when the draft did go out, there was an approval that the agenda was ready to go and we
Yeah,
posted.
but what was posted on the public posting, what was posted, which agenda was posted then?
I'd have to go back.
That's what I'm saying, I think we have to review it.
But this is the minutes?
Yeah, those are the minutes, but it's not a copy of the agenda.
So minutes are not copies of the agenda. We
What's
have
that?
an agenda that was posted.
Right.
These are reflective of the minutes for the meeting.
But I guess what I'm saying is what went out to the public was not the subject matter that was discussed at the meeting.
It was a subject matter discussed within the executive session.
Yeah, but it wasn't about parks.
You saying that on the top part on council?
I recall exactly.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that's up to you guys, but I'm just saying that I think we should pull that off and review it.
But the minutes
That
are
might be a
correct.
question for Mick to answer.
Spell, Mick is here, I didn't think it would be here. Mick?
can't hear you.
He's muted.
Take it off mute.
Can you hear me now?
Right.
I turned it up, okay. By the way, the sound in the picture is much better today. I think the mayor's point is there was an item posted on the agenda that was not on the discussion. Is that right?
Correct.
Yes, sir.
Well, I need to double check that.
It was actually where it says, the notice is hereby given that the city council of Alpine, blah, 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 will have a special meeting, and in that first paragraph, it said in conjunction or joined with the Parks Board.
Oh.
Is what he's at, that was the question.
And that was in the notice
That was on, yes, that was posted, the
for the
agenda.
meeting. And we didn't have a quick joint meeting with Parks and Rec.
No, sir.
So, well, frankly, I think as long as the minutes reflect what actually occurred at the meeting, I don't think that makes the notice invalid because it did post that there was going to be a city council meeting. I think that's surplus language in the caption of the notice. So I think your minutes can still be adopted that reflect what actually occurred at the meeting.
Okay. So we had then.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So any more discussion then? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, like sign, motion carries. Minutes are approved. Thank you. Okay, information or discussion. And we'll go with Councilman Stevens.
So this was really aimed at getting an update for all of us in the Park Master Plan. Kirsten Moody is the chair of the Parks and Recreation Board. She's here to give us an update. And nice to have you back here. Thanks for driving in. And I know Vicky's probably going to help participate as well. They've been doing lots of work, thought it worthwhile.
We have been, poor Vicki, I drove in, but she drove in just for this very meeting. I mean, she's going all the way up to Presidio. She is not feeling super well, so I'm glad she's here to sort of, in case I get in over my head, I think they sent her up, which is a good thing to do.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm Kirsten Moody. Do I need to state anything else? It's fine, I'm on the agenda. So what I want to talk to y'all about, we really haven't done an update for the parks in general lately, and so I was trying to think of a way to sort of capture what all, or at least most of what I want, y'all to leave here with in sort of a short time period, because I know that you've always got a lot going on your agendas. So I timed myself, it was about 15 minutes when I timed it. I hope that's okay. I don't know if I should probably leave the questions till afterwards. But anyway, here we'll go, and so just stop me along the way. But thanks especially to Councilman Stevens for putting me on the agenda, because this wasn't really planned, but I think it's a good point in the planning process to go ahead and talk to everybody. And I know you've all got a copy of my outline in there. Again, I said I'll try to be brief. I know it looks long, but you've actually got most of the meat of the talk in the outline there, so you can take it with you.
So Kirsten, we
Yes.
didn't get anything
Oh.
in your outline. It's okay, so verbalize it.
You didn't get the outline?
Nope.
Okay, okay. Well, so I can verbalize it for you. So here's, and I can send it afterwards or however that works. So I was trying to structure this in a way that would be easy to take away, you know, what I want you to take away. And so what I realized that I wanted to say is, here's what I have learned through this process. Because when I came on as Parks Board Chair, I don't have any parks experience really. I'm from Alpine, I love Alpine, I'm interested in the parks, but it wasn't like it was my profession. So that's how I structured it. I was like, here's what I've learned. And so there are sort of 8 big categories, and then one sort of personal privilege category at the end. And the 8 big things that I have learned, 8 big categories are, why do we even have public parks? Alpine's park system has a lot going for it already.
Somebody have, is it Mix?
Mix ringing.
Can you mute it?
Hey, Mick, you may want to mute.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you.
Okay. So why do we even have public parks?
We didn't hear you.
The park system has a lot going for it already here in Alpine, which is good to know. I mean, if we're going to go through this whole process, it's good to know that we are not starting from nothing, and we're definitely not. The park system has room for improvement, of course, which is why we're doing it. Bringing in someone from the outside to guide us through this planning process was a good idea. And I put that in there especially as one of my 8 things, because I have heard a lot from people, why are we bringing somebody in to do this? We know what we want. We know what we need. We don't need somebody from the outside coming in. And I do think it's good to have brought them in, and so I wanted to just talk about that a little bit. Number 5 is I learned that everything doesn't have to be done all at once. We can really pace what we're doing with this. Some things will happen, hopefully, pretty quickly. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit, but some things may take 20 years to finish. And not all parks have to have the same things. So that was something that I learned. I'm going to tell you all about some big things we've actually found so far during the planning process, working through all the public comments and the surveys. Number 7 is we can't do everything everybody wants. And number 8 is, but we can do more and better than we might think. We can do more if we focus. And then my last section is just my 8 personal goals that we'll take as we go forward. So I'm not speaking as the board, but just sort of as a person who's been paying attention through this process. So back to why do we even have public parks? And I have that in there because when I took on this role as chair of this parks planning group, I wanted to be able to defend why I was going to ask for money for doing this. We're a very small town. We've never had a huge tax base. There are a lot of things the city does besides parks, and I wanted to sort of have my own understanding of why I thought we should even do this, why we should even have parks. So, so sort of what I learned through some of this, like what is a park, because it's different, it's not necessarily limited to what I thought it was before. We have them at every level of government parks, national and state and local, and so that's interesting to me. Like we obviously think as a people that it's a good thing to do. And then sort of most important to me is why would we have them in a rural place? I needed to be able to defend that sort of in my own mind to people. So starting out, I got a report, so I'm just looking everywhere online to find out parks general information, like what is the current thinking about parks and parks management and all that. And I came upon a study or a paper that came about from like a symposium called the Excellent City Park System, and I've listed it at the bottom of what you will get eventually, by the Trust for Public Land. And it was a symposium that was done a long time ago, actually like 2006, I think. And one of the participants in it was a person from A&M, and he was, there were not very many participants, so I called him and said, who should I talk to, what's going on, like what should I read? And he forwarded me to a woman named Jamie Ray Walker, and some of y'all will remember that she's the one that came down and talked to us. So she's in Dallas, she works for the A&M Extension Office, but her work is with local parks all over the state. And so she was able to come down, she had a little budget money, and gave us a talk. It's like a 2-hour Parks 101 talk And during that talk is when I was able to form a little bit more understanding about parks. And they're not just playgrounds for kids, although that certainly is a big part of what parks are and what they should be. But they're also things like a linear park. I don't know how much y'all know about the High Line in New York, but things like that, there's sort of reuse of other things. There are ideas about using sort of defunct other things as linear parks. It's valuable to have parkland for people that aren't just kids playing, but maybe older people who want to sit or the exercise. Or there's all kinds of things that parks do that aren't just what you think of immediately. And then there are also places like our old town square, which are not parkland that I would have thought, but are pieces of public property that enhance the daily life of people. So anyway, it sort of broadened my idea of what parks are. And then there's also, and this was new to me, and I still need to learn more about this, but there's a level of maintenance scale that people apply to parks. So I think it's 1 to 5, and you have some parks that are maintained at a very high level, and I can't remember if that's 1 or if that's 5, I'm sure some of you all know. But we don't have to maintain everything to that level. And some things can be maintained at not much level at all. There are a lot of places going to not mowing much anymore, certain areas. So anyway, there are things we can think about in terms of maintenance that may lessen the load where we can, so that we can focus more energy elsewhere. So when I was looking at, they have them at every level of government, so they must be important. Trying to get my mind around what's different about a municipal park. So state and federal parks, national parks, are a lot of times more about, or somewhat about, the land conservation as well as people enjoying. Yeah.
So you've got lots to cover.
Okay, no, I know. This is it. This is the last little part.
And it'll be helpful for us because you've been working with Vicki and the whole team trying to pull a plan together.
Yeah.
There's certainly some reading material you're going to send to us through Cynthia. That's the best way to get it, so we can go off and read all that.
There is. Okay.
I think the key is going to be, you've learned a lot. What's kind of the schedule?
I learned a lot.
When can we come back? When
Yes.
should we expect to come back and hear from you with the draft plan? Because as you're going to hear a little bit later in the meeting, we're trying to understand budgets for the next fiscal year.
Right.
And that process has kind of started.
I know. And I do understand that I need to move on. I just wanted, since I had this one opportunity, do you know what I mean? To say, this is why it's important as we move into budgeting. So I'll just make my one last point. I won't talk about national parks anymore, but I will say in a rural place, I think that it's important. I have decided that I think it's important to have parks, and it's because of the reasons why they're actually different from those kind of parks. Parks are a place for us all to come together to gather. They're a public place for us to gather together, to improve our daily lives. And it doesn't matter that we're in a place where there already is a lot of open space. It's easy to understand why urban places need parks. But here we still need it, and it's for those reasons. It's for community building, it's for exercise and enjoyment, and just better quality of life. So that applies to us, even though we're not New York City and need places to get to nature. Okay, so we've got a lot going for us already. Okay, so this is what we have found through our parks plan. Previous generations of people have provided us a good base here. We've got a pool. One thing I learned when Jamie Ray Walker came out here from Dallas, and she said, y'all have a pool that still is going? A lot of small towns have gotten rid of their pools. I didn't know that. That was a perspective that I hadn't gotten. And by the way, I have heard from staff that I believe that the pool is being filled already and is planning to be open on time, it sounds like, right when school gets out. That's what it sounds like is going on. The Coconut Complex is amazing. Places don't have that kind of sports field plus all the regular playing fields. We are lucky here that the maintenance crews care a lot about the parks. We have people, Robert comes to all of our meetings. They're very involved. They're always out there. You can find them. I learned also through my process with Jamie Ray that it's common in small towns like this for parks crews to do other things too, like streets. At first when I came in, I thought, why aren't those totally separate always? Well, I'm understanding more about why that's true. Alpine has a ton of involved parents, especially with the sports leagues. Maybe really, really high up there on the list is that we've got a really active Friends program, Friends nonprofit with Big Bend Parks and Rec. We have a lot of engaged board members. Anyway, we have all these people coming together. The setting is good. We've already got a tourist space. We've got a lot to build on. But we do have room for improvement, right? And so that's why we're doing this whole thing. People in some areas of town don't have a park within super easy walking distance, according to some of the standards that are out there. However, if you use the bigger version of the standards, we actually are not doing too bad, especially with the addition of Pueblo Nuevo and American Legion. If we can bring those to be something that are more useful to their neighborhoods, we have a pretty decent amount of neighborhood parks around for a town of our size. We have a problem in that some of our parks and parts of parks are not accessible to everybody. That's a big problem for a lot of reasons. We have all kinds of, upgrades that could happen to make things more beautiful and more pleasant, right? I mean, those are just going to happen. People really want a place for their babies at the pool. People really want more water fountains, more signs, things like that. And we learned that we can be developing our parks in ways that would draw tourists as well as benefit locals. So, festivals, bird watching areas, star watching, there's just a million things that we could be doing there that we're not always doing right now. And then we also found another big thing, that we really need better guiding documents, such as ordinances and some policy processes that we just really haven't put together as a body. Ball fields, complaints processes, we have a hard time on the board. I don't really know the process for getting us any complaints that come in or how that works, so we hear things, but anyway, there's all kinds of those things to be done. So bringing someone in from the outside was good. They know things we don't know because they are educated in this that we're not. They have experience, perspective. They see things about the town that we didn't see, that we don't see. And then they encourage us to design high. And by that I mean that there are lots of projects out there, and some that they might recommend to us, that are not feasible for us right now. We have no way of paying for them right now. We have no people to head them up right now. But they're still a good idea for us. People probably have said that they want them. And if they're in the plan and they're out there, sometimes there are people that come along and say, I'm actually really interested in your town. This is something I want to fund. I mean, it has happened to people. So having it in there is important, and having them to design that when we don't see it is important. So everything that doesn't have to be done at once. Not all parks have to have the same things. We talked about that. There is a lot of low-hanging fruit for us to tackle. We have a lot of things to do in the parks to make them more useful and more beautiful without embarking yet on some of the bigger things that'll come, I hope. So some big things that we found so far in the process. One is that the ball field situation needs attention in a lot of ways, and it's number of ball fields, getting the scheduling working right, getting policies down, and Jessica has come to our meeting and asked us to please, write and provide guidance to the city in developing some new ordinances and things. Just there are a lot of areas that the ball fields need help. Trails in general have a lot more traction than I had realized. I thought that it was, I had read in the paper everything going on about it. I had never been very involved, but it's much a bigger thing than I knew about, and there are an awful lot of people behind it, whether it's a creek trail or it's other trails. That's been interesting to me. Again, a big thing that we found is a lack of basic policy documents. Then we found that there is interest in indoor recreation space. There's a lot of interest in that. Again, that might be one of those things that is planning. We're planning right now, not so much planning to do it right now. ADA accessibility, as I said, bathrooms at Coconut are a big deal. And improving, what people are saying is they really want to improve existing, what we've got already, because we do have a good base. We can't do everything everybody wants, we all know that. We can probably do better than we think. Okay, down to my 8 personal goals. Can I do this?
So help us, because we got lots of stuff to cover.
Okay, here we go.
Help us, when will we see a plan?
We will, okay, so
We
our
spent 2
parks
hours
board,
with you all.
I know.
We spent 2 hours with you.
Our parks board has a very early, very rough draft right now, because we have a meeting on Friday of our parks board to go over that version of the draft, to just make sure that it's going in the direction that all of us sort of had envisioned, or that we don't have, anyway. So we'll be doing that on Friday, this Friday. We have our regular parks board meeting tomorrow night, and we probably won't touch much on the plan at all, just updates on dates and things like we have other business to do there. And then after that, the tentative plan right now is that our board would be approving this plan on June 12th. So that's our next board meeting, our June board meeting. That's our hope. If that all works right, I believe that the plan is then to present it to council on June 18th. And that we would hope for council approval in July, at one of the meetings in July. And then at that point, we'll be set up to talk about, budgeting, getting grants done, working on ordinances, sort of getting past all that, and then doing up all these details. So that's where we are on that. And I will send you through Cynthia, I guess, this document.
Kirsten, could you go ahead and go through your 8 items?
Okay.
Because I read it, and I think it'd be good for the council to hear it.
Thank you.
Even though they're going to see it later.
I'll go fast. I decided at the beginning of the process we were doing this, I needed some guiding sort of values, and so I decided that I would try to make this process transparent, inclusive, and persistent. So my goal is that, or to be persistent through it, my goal is to continue that, to not let up on those issues. Make sure we have the plan in front of the board at every meeting. And when new things come up, which they will, make sure we're asking ourselves how that fits in with the board. Because what I want to do is leave for the next board. We're not going to be on it forever. They'll be doing this process again in the next 5 to 10 years. Good information that they can work on and build from. Be ready to help with grant writing or research. Continue to keep in mind that we need to be finding ways for the elderly people in our community. I'm not sure we've been able to tease that out through this process as much. We haven't heard as much from that. And so that is something that's important to me. I want to build on what Mitch and Vicki have done in putting together groups of people, like-minded people that are able to work on issues. The trail being a really good example of how that's come together, but also there are artists and artisans in town that can do beautiful things. There are plant people. There are all these groups that we could work on there. Keep educating myself and the board about possibilities for parks and parks funding. Don't let down on that. We really want to make sure we're more involved in the budget process this year, since we've got a little bit more knowledge behind us, having started the board work. And always try to figure out more ways to use the parks. There are lots of things we don't do in the parks already that we could. And then what really a main takeaway for me is to give serious consideration to the possibility of figuring out a way to hire an administrative and employee, even part-time maybe, whose focus is parks. And they might help with some grants. I mean, I'm not sure that, I think that job could balloon really fast. But I think that we need to have somebody, just a point person on parks to handle all the things that parks do and could do, and could bring more revenue in if we could do. So, thank y'all. I know.
Thank you for your passion.
And I'll make sure that you get that. Anything else? Any other questions? I'm sorry, I have.
No, I'd like to compliment you, Christine, and also Vicki and her colleagues. Seems like you guys have collected a lot of very good information, and it's sort of falling into place to present to the public, and it's certainly a plan that's we're looking forward to for the benefit of our residents in Alpine. So
I think it'll be one, and they have worked.
Just the public meeting date.
Oh, the public meeting, I'm sorry, you're right. Okay, so there was a public meeting, the third public meeting. So this was not in the contract that Mitch and Vicki initially signed, but they have agreed to do this because I think they felt like we just needed it. And that is?
May 22nd.
May 22nd.
Yes, so it's a Wednesday, May 22nd, it's a Wednesday, and then the previous Tuesday, that's the 21st, we plan on getting on the agenda to do a more content-wise update of the plan. But at the public meeting, I think it's at 6, from 6 to 8. And then the public.
The info, correct?
Yeah, and the public will have 2 weeks to still comment on whatever's presented at that public meeting. So that's why we still have at least 2 months after that for final approval.
They have worked super hard.
just out of curiosity, Vicki, with all the public input and public meetings and so forth, when do you foresee the final one?
We hope the latest that y'all approve this is July 16th. I think that's the second, that's the second meeting that y'all have. If everything can be approved by July 2nd, but otherwise July 16th is kind of we want to have everything wrapped up and approved by you, adopted by you.
Once that plan is approved, then it goes to print and then it goes out to the public again, or?
Correct. Yeah.
Well, we put it on our website and it's published publicly and then it's used as a planning document and kind of just a pathway for us to move forward in the years to come. I just want to comment about, I guess, the biggest challenge here lately with this park plan has been identifying ownership and parks and who's actually responsible for what. And I think there's still a few questions that we have in some of those. And I think the bigger ones we finally got resolved. And Gio and Cynthia's office has been tremendous in hunting down those documents.
He was just super responsive, super on everything, really, really good.
How many parks do we own?
Well,
Ballpark.
we own, and the way that I would say it, we own, I would say we own kind of 6 parks and 3 other additional park-like places.
And we've been maintaining some parks that are not parks.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vicki.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay, next one is going to be by Alabama Fire Department Assistant Chief Mike Scudder.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. Mike Scudder. I have the 2 reports here. One was for the 4th quarter. I wasn't able to attend the meeting in February when that report was due, so I have both of them for you. The first one I have, 4th quarter 2018, October 1st through December 31st, we had 19 total calls. 11 of the calls were in the city and 8 calls were in the county. Breakdown of the calls for October 2018, we had 4 calls total. 3 were in the city, 1 was in the county. Those would include a gasoline spill fire in the city, a vehicle fire in the city, a structure fire in the county, and a stove fire in the city. In November 2018, 6 fire calls, 4 were in the city, 2 in the county. One of the calls, smoke in the lobby of a hotel due to a fire pit and the door was left open. That was a long one. A dumpster fire in the city, washed down in the city. 2 manpower assists in the county, and 1 smoking building from an AC unit motor fire that was in the city. In December 2018, we had 9 fire calls, 4 were in the city, 5 in the county. We had an electrical fire from a heater motor in the city, a stove fire that was in the city that we started the response and were canceled because the person put the fire out and canceled the department. We had a structure fire, which we were mutual aid to Marathon to assist their department for a house on fire. We had an electrical fire with an outlet short, dumpster fire that was canceled en route. That was also in the county. Somebody took a water hose and put it out, so we were canceled by the county sheriff's office. Dumpster fire that was in the county. A vehicle rollover back when we had the big ice storm was canceled en route. And then on the same day had another vehicle rollover that actually required extrication that was in the county. Then we had a structure fire, it was actually in the same time when we had the ice storm, that turned out to be an attic fire, and that was in the city. During that quarter, we had 20 members. We did 18 hours of training during the 13 fire department meetings during that quarter. Let's see. You want to do questions after I finish the whole thing? Or? Okay, now the first quarter of 2019, January 1st to March 31st, we had 18 fire calls. 9 were in the city, 9 were in the county. During the breakdown here, January 2019, we had 8 fire calls. 1 was in the city, 7 were in the county. The majority, they were all 6 brush fires that were in the county. We had a false alarm structure fire. It was a good intent call. Somebody saw smoke coming from but they thought it was a house. It was actually a barbecue pit, so we were canceled on that. And then we had a manpower assist in the county. In February, we had 7 fire calls, 6 were in the city, 1 was in the county. We had a structure fire where we had a fire in the wall of a house in the city. A structure fire that had interior involvement, that was the city. A structure fire that had interior involvement, that was in the county. 2 dumpster fires that were in the city. A stove fire was grease on top of a stove. We were canceling the route. They got the fire out and canceled us. And then we had a brush fire in the city. In March 2019, we had 3 fire calls. 2 were in the city, 1 was in the county. 1 was a tree fire in the city, a manpower assist in the county, and then a dumpster fire in the city. During that court, we had 17 members, and just to note that the 3 members that were in the first quarter, all 3 were college students that graduated. So of course, we lost them when January came around. And during that time, we did 20 hours of in-house fire training during the 13 fire department meetings. And I don't think I had it on here, but of the 17 members, I know you had asked before when we had a meeting, the division on how many were college students and how many were like citizens. And right now we have, I believe it's 9 college students and 8 people that live in Alpine that are actually volunteers.
So does that mean, Mike, you expect to be down to 8 firefighters this summer?
Actually, at our last meeting, only 1 of our students is going home for the summer. Okay. So rest of them are actually going to be here for the whole summer.
So you have 16.
Yeah, so we'll have at least 16 firefighters during the summer. That's always a big concern because a lot of times we lose a large majority and have 1 or 2 stay, and this time it's actually flip-flopped, and a lot of them have they got summer jobs here and they're staying, and one of the reasons they want to stay is because they want to volunteer on the fire department. So that's admirable to us that these guys could go home if they wanted to and enjoy the summer, but they took jobs and want to stay to do this. So
great, good, that's good news. And your peak number is 35? That's
yes.
The max number? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Kind of half staffed.
Yes, sir.
I'm just curious, but the dumpster fires, how do they get started?
You know, that's a good question, and almost every one of them are from barbecues. People take their coals and dump them in the dumpster, and a little while later, they catch fire. You know, the breeze will come up, and next thing you know, somebody's calling and saying the dumpster's on fire. And some of them are minor, depending if there's not very much in there, it doesn't do much damage, but we had one, I think it was in April, and it did some significant damage. It was going for a while. It was way back in one of the alleys that people didn't see until later on, and it burned the plastic tops and destroyed that, the top to those dumpsters. So we reported to TDS so that they can come out and take a look at that. And we try to identify. We've had the police, when the police are on scene, we try to identify that to have them talk to the person if they know who did it, and don't put live coals in a dumpster. It's going to cause a fire, and it does. I mean, 99% of those fires are caused by that. And a lot of them, where it's funny, is like when there's like it's a really nice weekend or football season and there's football games. That's when we pretty much know we're going to get a dumpster fire from coals.
Chief, I've got contacted by some National Guard folks.
Yes, sir.
And some are certified diesel mechanics and whatnot, and they said they would volunteer to do free maintenance on the vehicles. We provide the parts, and they would do the maintenance.
Oh, great. I was approached by several of them a couple of months ago, and they were interested in, while they were here, coming down to help, but as of yet,
well, they're here for another year.
Okay. And it just may be a bad time on the Wednesday night or something when, I've told them.
And this young man's from Alabama, so he's got some folks. And then Thursday, I was approached by a young lady also that's interested.
Great.
Okay, so I'll give you a contact number and you can call her directly.
Okay, great. Okay, sure. Yes, sir.
I'd like to comment about your EMS people. About a week and a half ago, my wife collapsed in the library. Your people came out and took her to the emergency room, and I just wanted you to know I was very impressed with the professionalism and the care and the courtesy that they showed my wife.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sure, you're welcome. I'll pass it on. Thank you.
And there was 3 of them.